everybody, and welcome to our show this morning. Sorry we're a little bit late. Osana's on her way to Chicago, where we have a meeting of the party's Labor Commission, working class to the front. Joel is joining us. Good morning, Joel. Great to see you.
Good morning.
Like that purple shirt. Good morning, Scott and Anita. We got a lot to talk about this morning. Bunches of stuff happened this weekend. I want to start, though, with something that's not on the agenda, though we talked about it in our editorial meeting yesterday. And that was that attack, they're calling it the Montgomery Brawl, on the docks in Montgomery, Alabama. Did you see that, Joe?
Yeah.
Anita, Scott, did you see it?
Sure. It was filmed
What,
from
what,
I've seen
multiple
some
angles.
coverage of it, yeah.
it was, I mean, I guess there was a guy who was in charge of the dock, and there were some other guys. The guy who was in charge of the dock was black, and there were some other guys who were white who had a little boat that was parked in the wrong place. And the African American guy said, "Y'all got to move your boat because another boat that acts as a ferry or a tour boat or something was supposed to dock there." And the boys, I guess you could call them good old boys, they were young too, 18, 19, 20, refused. And it led to altercation, and a bunch of white guys jumped on the African American, and the African Americans who were the head workers came to his defense and turned into this 15, 20 minute. Ooh, what the hell was that about, Joel?
It's hard to decide from watching video what people's personal motives are, but what it looked like to me was some white guys thought that they had some sort of duty or right or privilege to beat up this guy. And the first part of that video really reminded me of things like Rodney King, that video from the early 1990s with a bunch of white people standing around pounding on another man. But it was heartening to me to see people come to his aid and defend him and battle back. And I saw a lot of people comment on that aspect of it. And, they protected the security guard from this attack or tried to. And, I hope justice wins out in the end.
Anita, what were your impressions?
Well, apparently those same group of white men who had parked their boat illegally had done this in the past, and actually a couple of years ago had stolen the river boats, the golf cart that belonged to the people who run the river boat. And the police at that time urged them not to press charges. So this is a group of people who have been, pushing their privilege, a little too far for a long time. And even before the video recording started, there was apparently a lot of racial slurs thrown at the people who were just saying, "Get your boat out of our way. We need to park it right there or dock it." I guess I'm not a riverboat sort of person, but docking it is what they needed to do right there. So, yeah,
Scott,
apparently it goes back.
Scott, your impression?
Well, just that, that's such a characteristic pattern, right, of white supremacy in the United States. That, you know, uh, white guys who think they don't have to abide by the rules that are made or enforced by people of color. That was the whole deal with the Obama presidency, right? The whole backlash from the right against that, like the idea that a black guy might be in charge of, might be in leadership over white people. That was just intolerable to white supremacy, and this was just a manifestation of that same thing. The folding chair that was used in defending the security guard has become kind of a meme. And it made me think of the great African American Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, who once said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. I'm not sure that's exactly what she meant, but and certainly violence is not something that we look to as a a way of pressing political demands. But it was heartening to see people come to the defense of this person who was attacked by a gang of white supremacists.
You not only need a seat at the table, that's the first step, but you need to be respected at the table. And your leadership has to be accepted at the table, And it's an ongoing problem, the acceptance of Black and brown Asian leadership. I mean, it's and it's I gotta say, it's there's no section of this society that is immune from that, including in our ranks. Believe it or not, we constantly have to fight for our leadership, and that's because of the ongoing, even unconscious impact of the superiority complex that some people have. The difference in the Communist Party is that we're aware of it and that we consciously fight against it. We don't act like it don't exist. Male supremacy. It exists. White supremacy. It exists. It's a function of the social psychology and practice of, and the fact of the matter is that you got to constantly 24/7 fight against it. Some places it's more manifest in Montgomery, but it's also manifest in Ohio. Male supremacy in Ohio. But Anita, you had a big victory. What was that, Tuesday? You were worried about it. Why were you so worried?
Well, at the end there, in the last couple of weeks, I guess maybe in early June, there was a poll that came out and said 57% of Ohioans were planning to vote no on issue 1, which was the right way to vote. That was to protect democratic rights, citizen initiatives. And apparently, but after that, things seemed to narrow quite a bit. And the Vote Yes campaigners put a lot of money into ads. And just seemed to be more and more vocal. So it was a little, and all of a sudden they came out with their own signs. We've had so many signs that say vote no, and all of a sudden there were, very similar looking signs that said vote yes. So it was a little nerve-wracking there at the end. Also, we had a lot of red baiting going on. A lot of people saying don't vote like the Ohio, district of the Communist Party says. So that was a little nerve-wracking, but in the end, that poll turned out to be exactly right, 57% no. And I'm so proud of my state and the coalition that was put together to really affect this. You see the sign that says AFL-CIO there. We had labor really all in on this, and of course, reproductive rights organizations all in. And other groups who are just concerned about democratic rights, including many Republicans. And apparently many Republicans voted for this because there were counties where Trump had won by, 60% of the vote, and the vote on no on issue 1 also won. So including your favorite county, Joe, Mahoning County, but also Trumbull. Delaware, which is a big suburban county that was very Republican, and Trump won there by many points. And vote no worked there too. Uh-oh, am I fading? I thought
You're here. You're here. Have no fear.
All right, good.
We're not letting you go anywhere.
Thank you.
Joel, this is what you call an all people's victory. I mean, really, the essence of it. It was a wide swath of the population. What do you think prompted that kind of thing, and what does it imply for the future, in your opinion?
Well, I think that the idea of passing a referendum to make it more difficult to pass referendums, was one of the key things, right? It was an attack on democracy. it was something that I think most Ohioans saw as an attack on their political power, right? Very basically. I think also that it suggests something about the future, right? The future is that white supremacy, anti-worker, ultra-right, anti-women politics needs increasingly to sort of defend itself with minorities of the popular vote, right? You know, if we think back to 2016, Trump did not win a majority of the popular vote, and it sort of suggests that um, they feel this need to create these sort of insurmountable political situations, like requiring 60%. Right, that's essentially minority rule. Right, essentially that a small group of people can create a policy, and then it becomes impossible to overturn. And that, to me, that signals that the ultra right is becoming very desperate about its position. Right, it's becoming increasingly reliant on minority rule to perpetuate itself. So it's a positive thing, but it also suggests that there are some aspects of our political system that need to be fundamentally changed in order to defend democracy.
Scott, the Republican, the MAGA, there was a section of the MAGA movement, and I forget the exact term that they used, but they said that they wanted to focus, we mentioned it at the National Committee meeting, that they wanted to focus on one issue at a time, one issue at a time. And because they felt that they had overreached before, taking on LGBTQ rights, taking on immigration, taking on abortion rights, putting it all on the table at the same time. So now we're not going to do that this time. We're going to focus on this abortion thing, and we're going to raise and they kind of framed it as save democracy, save the Constitution, save it from these leftists who are, but they overstepped again, didn't they?
It looks like they have, yeah. This abortion issue, despite some real victories for the extreme right, has overall not gone well for them. There's been a ton of backlash. I think in a typical misogynist fashion, they vastly underestimated the determination, the strength, the militancy, the political power of women-led groups and organizations. I think they also overestimated they relied too much on also a misogynist, male supremacist definition of how men might move on this, because men have been participating in movements in favor of reproductive freedom. So yeah, they made a mistake. That said, I've also heard people put forth the idea that we're just going to let the Republicans make mistakes, and then the backlash against them will sort of sweep them out of power, and that's not going to work either. Like Anita sort of alluded to in talking about the struggle in Ohio, it takes a huge amount of work to turn Republican mistakes into all people's victories. It's not something that happens automatically at all. This is about not just preserving democracy, but expanding it, and that takes a huge amount of strength. And it's really, really terrific to see that it's happening, and really terrific in a certain way to see that the red baiting is intensifying in Ohio, because that means that the leadership of the party is being recognized in this struggle. So congratulations to the Ohio district.
Congratulations, home state, Ohio, on front row. And this red baiting thing, they tried that in Philadelphia too. When the Mothers for Liberty, the YCL was really involved in helping organize the protests and the festivals, the protests that happened around that. And I think it was the Washington Examiner put out story either, whether one of the leaders of Women's for Liberty said, Mothers for Liberty said, you can either be with us or be with the Young Communist League. Well, the people, at least on this issue, are with us, are with democracy, with a small d. And that included moderates and Democrats with a big D and Republicans with a big R and some libertarians, I guess, and so on and so forth. And that's really important because the danger on the right is many-sided and complex. And we saw it last Saturday. Saturday was a bad day in some respects a week ago because you had that racist attack in Montgomery. But there was also an article that appeared in the New York Times, so-called news analysis, investigative journalism. And what did they investigate? The alleged instructions given by the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China to a number of U.S. organizations that oppose U.S. foreign policy. And they said influence was involved, Anita, and money was involved, and that they were acting on the behest of a foreign principal. Where have we heard that before, Anita?
Well, we heard it during the McCarthy era, of course, when communists were accused of being foreign agents. This article was really nefarious and subtle and just really undermining people's understanding of what's going on. I mean, an organization in the United States has every right to express their positive opinions about certain developments in different countries. I know we always come out and talk about the drug policy in Portugal or the family leave policy in Germany or whatever as being a positive thing. I just don't understand this. And one of there were really some real lies, I guess I would say, in that article. One thing they said was Code Pink, defended the internment of Uyghurs in China. That's not what they're defending. They're defending the free self-determination of all peoples. And they just don't like the way certain propaganda arms in this country are using that situation in China against China and to foment a Cold War with China. So it was a very disturbing article, and I hope people can see through what's going on there.
Joel, it sounds like McCarthyism. I mean, it's almost unspeakable. Joe McCarthy, Roy Cohn, what's his name? J. Edgar Hoover would have been green with envy at the tone and content of this article. And the New York Times, this great bastion of liberalism and against Trump and 1619 prior. What's going on, Joe? Maybe you study these issues more than me. I'm confused.
Either people in this country have a right to protest and petition their government for an end to war or to change policy, or they don't. And it seems like the New York Times gets to pick and choose when those are justifiable or justified. One of the interesting side effects of the story is that Marco Rubio, the senator from Florida, is calling for a DOJ investigation. And here's a guy who takes money from all kinds of nefarious organizations. GEO Group is one of his biggest donors. GEO Group is the second largest prison company, private prison company in the United States. It has contracts with the federal government. It's been responsible for some of the worst human rights atrocities, mass imprisonment of people on the U.S. borders. So if we're going to be concerned about human rights, let's let's not be hypocritical, New York Times. Let's focus on the truth of what the United States is perpetrating using private corporations that give money to U.S. senators, not just for the sake of fun and games, right? They expect votes, they expect policy, they expect money in return for those donations, right? It's kind of a system of legal bribery that everybody sort of in Washington and New York and everywhere, any media, halls of Congress, look the other way at. They chuckle about. They when somebody says, "Hey, this is corrupt," they say, "Nope, nope, we're going to protect the free speech of corporations." So yeah, no, this is a height of hypocrisy, right? The New York Times has been a defender of some of the worst atrocities perpetrated. The Iraq War. Let's talk about aluminum tubes, for example, in the run-up to the Iraq War. If people recall those stories coming out of the New York Times, it's the peak of hypocrisy, and they need to walk back this story. They need to defend the right of people to protest and petition their government, and that's really the issue. And they don't like what they're protesting, they don't like what they're petitioning, so they invent and they prevaricate and they make up things. So let's be on guard for that.
Scott, the people who they're attacking have names. They have names. They're Code Pink, Anita mentioned. People's Forum, which is a left-wing, socialist-oriented public Marxist school here in New York. Tricontinental and Vijay Prashad, another organization and guy who's doing good work, great work, exposing the intrigues of U.S. and other forms of imperialism. And then there's another guy who I never met. In fact, I never heard of him until last week. His name is Neville Roy Singham. Apparently, he's a wealthy internet big shot, or was former big shot, who supports left-wing causes. And Scott, Trump and the MAGA right, along with the majority leader of the Senate and the ruling class think tank, started this red baiting. And now the New York Times, big liberals, why do they always end up trumpeting these fascist talking points?
Well, that's really the core of it, right? You have this paper that purports to be on the liberal side of things, that positions itself as against Trump, in favor of democracy, in favor of all these great things. And then when it comes to this point, when it comes to the to attacking the left, they join right in. Trump at a rally says, we're going to kick all the foreign Christian-hating communists out of the United States. And how does the New York Times respond? Oh, yeah, let's start, flinging charges of like being a foreign agent, of the Communist Party of China around. It's disgraceful, and it's a service to fascism. Why do they do it? Well, Lenin had a really good explanation of that. Lenin's explanation was that even the most liberal, the most democratic-minded section of the capitalist class are still capitalists, right? And their power at the bottom as capitalists is undemocratic. So they can't lead the fight for democracy. Some of them may participate in various ways, around various issues, but they can't lead as a class because they depend on undemocratic forms of rule, right? The rule of property over labor under capitalism is fundamentally undemocratic. So this liberal section of the bourgeoisie is in a kind of in a rough position, because on the one hand, they do have some democratic aspirations. On the other hand, they try to protect their class privilege, and the result of that is they end up seeking always compromise, with the extreme right, unity with the extreme right, bipartisanship in attacking the left, apparently. And I think we should also say that the supposition underneath everything in this article is that China does not have a legitimate role in the world, that it is not legitimate to present China in a positive light, um, and that's a ridiculous idea. Like the idea that any time someone, you know, refers positively to a development in China, that they must be somehow under the illicit or unlawful influence of, you know, the 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 Chinese government is an absolutely nonsensical position.
You know, they did this to W.E.B. Du Bois and a whole lot of other people. Du Bois was the president of a group called the Office on Africa. I forget the name of it. And along with two or three others in 1951, 52, they said, "You're an agent of a foreign principal acting under the behest of Moscow. You need to register." He refused. And 83 years old, handcuffed. And they were about to try him. And his chief defender was Albert Einstein. And then finally, they realized that they had created a martyr, or they were about to, and they dropped the. This is a very dangerous development, and it's going to affect everybody. And this is how witch hunts start. Hello, this is how witch. And what Marco Rubio is doing is very dangerous, calling on the Justice Department to investigate. This is how the House Un-American Activities, my grandma used to call them the Un-American Committee, got started. And Jimmy Baldwin, in a letter to Angela Davis, when she was attacked and framed and almost sent to the electric chair, he had it right. He said, "Angela, my dear sister, if they come for you in the morning, they'll come for us in the evening." Everybody has a stake in this fight for democracy and against these anti-communist, anti-socialist, anti-democratic. The New York Times need to be ashamed of themselves. But you can't rest on their shame. Scott's right. You know, they're capitalists after all, and therefore, and under pressure, liberals always move to the right, always. And therefore, we have to build a countervailing pressure, you know, to push based in the working class and the people, to push the country, kicking and screaming if necessary, including these vacillating middle class elements, big bourgeois. Push them kicking or screaming in the opposite direction, because the future of the country, democracy, depends on it. Let's move the agenda to our discussion question, because in a certain sense it kind of bears on it. We got a mailbag question. It kind of goes something like this: "Why are y'all talking about multipolarity? What the hell does that mean? Should socialists side with the national bourgeoisie in defense of capitalist exploitation? There ain't no anti-imperialist ground on which democratic demands for a better distribution of money, better distribution of the world market, better distribution of exploit. Ain't no such thing of that. Hey, y'all, wake up." This person writes to us. "Dimitrov is dead. Ain't no democratic bourgeoisie. What are you talking about? Ain't no progressive bourgeois demands. You're either with Lenin or with Kotsky." Anita, do you agree with that or not?
No, I mean this question sort of made my head hurt a little bit. But defending, I mean, I can't even get past the defending capitalist exploitation as if that is something we ever do. I just don't get it. I think maybe this person's coming from this idea that the working class in the United States is different than the working class internationally, which of course there are different conditions. I'm not sure where this person is coming from with this question, but I know our party does not defend capitalist exploitation. Sometimes we have allies who are, in the bourgeois, even like in the Ohio fight, we had some Republican allies that certainly are not agreeing with us on anything else, but we did ally with them on this one issue. So I don't know. Is that what this questioner is referring to? I'm not
Got
sure.
1 minute. What do you think? You talked about
Um,
democratic-minded bourgeoisie.
the
Are you
so
with
the
Kotsky or were
thing.
you with Lenin?
Well, I'm with Lenin, who said that the working class has to lead the struggle for democracy, including under capitalism. Right? Every nation, every people has its own path to socialism, and that path is made out of democratic demands that include demands for equal rights for the racially and nationally oppressed, equal rights for women, all sorts of things that sections of the bourgeoisie may sometimes, um, you know, ally themselves with in a partial and inconsistent way. The working class has to lead. That's what this is missing. There are no progressive bourgeois demands. There are progressive working class demands that some sections, some forces within other classes can be dragged into uh, um, supporting, kicking and screaming, maybe as Joe said.
Joel, focus the struggle for African American empowerment, the struggle for women's equality are bourgeois democratic demands. I mean, that the working class sides with. So is it really true that there are no progressive, there's no ability to move the struggle for democracy forward in a bourgeois democratic government dispensation?
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think this question really suffers from a very narrow interpretation of things like class and those other systemic forces. I think you're right. The struggle for racial equality is a working class issue, but it is fundamentally a democratic issue. It is the source of working class power, one of the sources of working class power, but it is just sort of uh, a human rights based concept. So it has both of those qualities at the same time. And so interpreting this as you either are Lenin or Kotsky. Why not? Why those two particular characters? Why not Du Bois? Why couldn't we be Angela Davis? Why couldn't we be with her? Why couldn't we be with Claudia Jones? Why couldn't we be with Amilcar Cabral? Why those two guys? So it's I think it's like I agree with Scott. It's fundamentally a misunderstanding of Lenin himself and a distortion of politics. It's kind of like I don't want to be insulting or dismissive, but it's kind of a clown politics, right? You want to act like a clown. Go be a clown. Go do your thing. Don't worry about people with serious political goals and organizations. Go do it yourself. But yeah, so these are democratic questions, and we fight for them because they're part of the unity and strength of our class. So,
And Joel has the last word. Thank you, everybody. Good morning, Revolution, everybody. We'll see you next week, same time, same station, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook Live. Take care. Thanks, everyone. Stay
bye.
strong, stay safe, stay in the fight.
Thank you, comrades.